Good morning. This is a Sunday School outline. Well, the Sunday School for January 31st, 2021, Grace Baptist Church. Trying not to ignore, is what I'm calling this, trying not to ignore some hard words. Now, the lectionary readings for today are Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 20, Psalm 111, Mark 1, 21 through 38, and 1 Corinthians 8, 1 through 13. I'm going to focus on Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 20, but I'm going to read the whole chapter. Why? Because one of the temptations modern, enlightened people have is to just ignore the parts of the Bible that contain uncomfortable things. Today's passage is one of those passages. If you read the whole chapter, that is. It uses the word abomination, and we don't like that word. You know, if you want to know what the Bible says, though, you can't know it if you leave part of it out. The other temptation is to explain away whatever it says. The problem with that is that you can explain everything into nothing. That's what we do with words, and that's a big problem. And still, the other temptation, there's more temptations than just three, but that's all I'm talking about, is to take those words and use them to be horrible and mean to yourself and to other people in the world, which might or might not have been the intent of the writers of the passage. Okay, speaking of writers, just who wrote Deuteronomy? Well, it's one of the Mosaic books, so traditionally it was attributed to Moses. But even not very good scholars admit that it was edited, at the least, by other folks. So if you have your Bible handy, and you should read 2 Kings 22. I'm going to read one verse, 2 Kings 22, 8. And Hilkiah, the high priest, said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. So, this book they found is a book of Deuteronomy, and it was unknown by anybody for hundreds of years. There was no other copy of the book. Somehow it was a book that strengthened the power base of the ones who reported it to the king. I'm sure the leading religious figures of that day were humble and wouldn't correct any typos to make themselves look better. Be that as it may, this book is definitely a part of our scriptural canon, and it should be treated seriously. So, I will attempt to read through one of these passages, and let's see if it has messages for us nowadays. Deuteronomy 18. The priests, the Levites, and all the tribe of Levi shall have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the offerings of the Lord made by fire and his inheritance. Therefore shall they have no inheritance among their brethren. The Lord is their inheritance, as he hath said unto them. Well, the religious leaders are supposed to be religious leaders, and not like everybody else. As he has said unto them, and this shall be the priest's due from the people, from them that offer a sacrifice, whether it be ox or sheep, and they shall give unto the priest the shoulder, and the two cheeks, and the maw, that's the jaw. The first fruit also of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the first of the fleece of thy sheep, shalt thou give to him. For the Lord thy God hath chosen him out of all thy tribes to stand and minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons forever. See, I told you it was good for the priests. Now, these religious leaders need to be supported by the non-religious folks. And by the way, the non-religious folks are supposed to be happy about this, right? And if a Levite come from one of thy gates out of all Israel, where he sojourned, and came with all the desire of his mind into the place which the Lord shall choose, then he shall minister in the name of the Lord his God, as all his brethren the Levites do, which stand there before the Lord. They shall have like portions to eat. In other words, Just because you worked a long time doesn't mean you get more. They shall have like portions to eat, beside that which cometh of the sale of his patrimony. Okay, if one of the religious leader folks decides to get a real job, maybe for a generation or two, maybe, and gives up that real job later to become a religious leader again, that's okay. He's still a religious leader because not only is he a religious leader, but this is something he was born to do. You know, people were born into the priestly family. People who aren't born into a religious leader family are just not good religious leader material. Well, we see more about that later. Let's change the subject from those born religious leaders. Let's talk about abominations. This is a word, this is why people don't read the middle of a chapter. We don't like this word. Let's talk about a word, abominations, a word applied to owls, by the way, and criminals, and kids who sass back at their parents. Those are all abominations. So that word is applied to those things, and a few other things too, plus the things mentioned in this passage. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh son or daughter to pass through the fire. Okay, stop right here. Yeah, anyone, his son or daughter to pass through the fire, that's talking about human sacrifice. Okay, that's killing people. That's not good. Or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter or witch. So, you know, what is this? This is, you're not supposed to kill your kids. You're not supposed to read your astrology. You're not supposed to read your horoscope. And you're not supposed to use any kind of a good luck charm. Or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. In other words, you can't pray to the saints. You can't you can't talk to dead people. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Now that's the really scary part. People get all tied up with those abominations. It's being perfect that's frightening. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers and times and unto diviners, but as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. So, what's the difference between all this stuff and dealing with God? Well, human sacrifice to you and me is a much worse thing than reading tea leaves. Interactions with the unseen realms. You know, anytime you deal with magic or divineering and that stuff, you're talking about the unseen. Interactions with the unseen realms that don't have God at the center of the action are dangerous. Because, face it, we're physical beings. And as physical beings, our realm is physical. We really aren't characters in a science fiction fantasy story. But we're characters in a wonderful, but still mundane universe. Some people give themselves airs, giving themselves much more power than they should have, and that's as much idolatry as worshiping the almighty dollar. And anybody in the modern world has heard of capitalism being compared to idolatry, and there's a point there. Even back in the middle of the Old Testament times, people weren't supposed to depend upon others for spiritual access to God. And that's where these people would get it wrong. Anytime someone comes between you and God, that's wrong. Anything else is idolatry. Now that's my opinion, by the way. Now let's change the subject in the Bible again. Back to Deuteronomy. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken, according to all that thou desiredst of the Lord thy God in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God. Oh, those people were so stupid, they didn't want to hear God. Anyway, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. But oh well, I digress. And the Lord spoke unto me. They had spoken that which they had spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto me, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. Okay, On second glance, you really don't have to be born into a religious leader family to be a religious leader, apparently. You can be a prophet. But be careful. If you screw up this prophecy thing, it gets you killed. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. That's the scary part. Prophets can be priests and Levites. I mean, Levites and priests can be prophets. But most of the prophets were just ordinary folks, people called by God, both men and women. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word on my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. So, if you're a prophet, make sure you do it right. So, don't be a bad prophet. And if thou say in thine, see, I wrote it right there. And so if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. But the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. Okay, that's into the chapter. So, a prophet has to be 100% on the mark. And yes, we should always question prophets. So let's get back to these abominations. What are we supposed to do with abominations? You know, they exist. And some of them we don't particularly think are so abominable nowadays. I mean, you know, the horoscope is printed in the newspaper, and you can read it online, right? First of all, as Christians, we need to be grateful to Jesus for removing every barrier between us and God. That's why we're Christians, after all. That takes care of us. But what about our neighbors? Well, as Christians, we should do as Jesus said. We should love our neighbors, period. Okay, it talks about it way back in Leviticus 19:18. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. And Mark 12:30 through 31 says, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Now this isn't Jesus who spoke. This was in a conversation with Jesus. But that's just it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So, you find people doing disgusting things, well, you got to love them. And that's what the Bible tells you to do.